Hey, Christ is risen. Indeed is risen. Christos voskres. Voistinu voskres. It's good to be with y'all. Beautiful day today. So, this intro shot here is from the island of Iona, the golf course there. So, that was the day that Deacon Michael Abramson and I explored the whole island by foot. No, there were no paths. Who needs paths? And who needs boots, right, Deacon? Who needs boots? We used the placemat from the restaurant we ate at. There are a couple of restaurants on the island, and the main one, they have these placemats that have a map of the island that show these sites that you know are cool, right? And one of them was a cave, and I forget Saint somebody's cave. Martin? I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I'm usually wrong. And so I'm like, we gotta find this. Well, it's not a huge island. What is it, a couple miles by one or something like that? And it was on the remote part, that southwestern part of it. And so we're up and down these crags and through these bogs. It was awesome. And we walked through the golf course. And you can see it's an awesome golf course, right? Because do you see what one of the hazards there is on the green? Yeah, one of the hazards on the green are these cow patties, right? I'm not sure what the rule is on a cow patty, right? I mean, if it were grass, you can move it away out of your line of putt, right? So maybe your 14th club would be some kind of a rake shovel thing. But we didn't actually play it. Although it would have been fun. We just walked and prayed and just soaked in that holy atmosphere while we were there. So, and yeah, I like it. I like golf. I like the island of Iona. And you know what? I like cow, right? We're in Bright Week. I love cow. So there we go. Hey, so I'm still Father Anthony Perkins, and this is my back porch. And looking out on, if you can see it, there's Lake Hartwell in the distance. It's a cove of it. If you're looking at a map of Lake Hartwell, we are not too far from the dam. So we live off of what's called Old 29. 29 is the name of the highway that runs through here, and it basically runs from Hartwell to Anderson. And the Old 29, now, if you were to drive it from Hartwell to Anderson, you would need one of those super duper cars that goes underwater or on top of water, because when they dammed it, that was a low spot, so it disappeared. So they rerouted it, and now you drive just south of the dam when you take the new 29, and the old 29 is that's where we live, like I said. So there's a cove out behind us, and there's the icon of Christ's victory over Hades, the Holy Resurrection. And you may see my dog running around every once in a while. We got two dogs, but one of them's my dog. I take him for a walk every morning. We've civilized him. This has been an interesting thing. See, I'm a strong believer that every house needs to have a rhythm, and we're pretty intentional about the rhythm of our house. And it's a rhythm that, we try to be gentle with one another and patient and kind. And so things that are normal behavior outside, like cursing and even sarcasm, we try to avoid. Gentle sarcasm does make its way in every once in a while. I mean, after all, we do have two teenagers, so that does happen. But in general, there's this rhythm, right? That's part of the rhythm. Do you hear it? So this dog comes into our lives. We had made the decision, no more big dogs, right? No more dogs that shed, and no more big dogs. So we had got this little dog, Penny, who's one of those intentional mutts. What are they called? Morkie. Yeah, Morkie. So it doesn't shed. A little yip dog. And that was going to be cool. Going to have a little yip dog. And then we inherited this black lab thing, right? Who was just completely uncivilized. So we brought him into our house, and just, there was no equilibrium for a while, right? So when you talk about rhythms and things, equilibrium is where you have a state that is sustainable. It becomes a solid status quo that's reliable, and you want to have one that's healthy. Well, we had that, and we brought him in, and it was disrupted. Right? I mean, to the point where, this dog, when I say uncivilized, you know what that means, right? Jumping on everybody. You couldn't turn your back when he was with the kids because you just didn't know. Strangers, people walking by. Just crazy dog. Just crazy dog. Crazy dog. And so that's been a project, and now, several years later, just a good dog, but it's progressive. So taking him for walks is part of that civilizing process and part of introducing him to how to be a productive part of the environment. And, when we showed up, we disrupted part of the equilibrium because there are dogs that are just outdoor dogs that just roam. It's rural Georgia. And we don't let him out without a leash because we don't know what he might kill. Yeah, it wouldn't be, people, but no telling what kind of animal he might bring back, the neighbor's chickens or something like that, and that'd be bad. That's bad for neighborhood relations. But when we go for walks, especially early on, we had to establish this new status quo, this new equilibrium, and which means he had to find his place in that hierarchy of neighborhood dogs. And he's the top dog. Just saying, he's the top dog. So we come out and he's on a leash, and which means he's easy prey. He's easy prey. It's like dangling, something before a shark. Here you go. Here's a dog. He's not gonna be able to fight back. But these two dogs that work together came at us really hard one day. They had come after me running, and they came after us, and one of them got inside the leash circle. And they chewed on each other a bit, and then so I got them apart, and ever since that, those dogs, they may say good morning, but they don't, the new equilibrium has been established. Every once in a while it's tested, but and they're good dogs, it's just they got to know where they stand with each other. So that's part of the deal. Yeah, hierarchies. Yeah, lobsters, right? That's an inside joke. Some of you will get it, some of you won't. That's okay. So let's do some deep breathing. I got some fun stuff to talk about. What I was thinking I would do with Fridays is, my old intro for my podcast was, wouldn't you like to get a retired intel officer and a political scientist and a priest together and just have them talk about stuff? Well, that's me. That's my civil, right? Yeah, that's my background. So I was thinking that on Fridays I would do kind of a weekend review where I go back and look at some of the main things that showed up, at least on my radar, and kind of evaluate them. And here's what I bring. It's not just, so I bring some analytic expertise to this, but I think mostly what I bring is optimism. And it's an optimism that is both part of my neighbors. It's an optimism that's just a natural part of my disposition, but it's also something that I've trained towards, right? Because optimism is one manifestation of charity, right? A specific kind of charity. And also trust, faith, hope, all of these things. But it is an optimism that's grounded in skepticism and, real analytic rigor, which means it has to constantly be informed by humility. So anyways, that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about some news. So aliens showed up on my radar. What do you mean by that? What do you mean? I don't mean literally, right? We didn't have, it didn't show up on the radar that we've got running here, on the roof to make sure that nobody comes in and steals our stuff. No, it showed up on my news feed. But in order to get us ready to talk about aliens and other stuff, let's move into that space where conversation is naturally more peaceful and charitable. We'll go through that deep breathing in Jesus' prayer. So we offer up everything to Him, in Him, and through Him. So as we breathe in, we'll say the first half of the Jesus prayer. As we breathe out, we'll say the second half. Okay, ready? Breathe in slowly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God. Pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Breathe in slowly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God. Pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Breathe in slowly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God. Pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Okay, very good. Now we're in that space. And notice, so anytime we do this, anytime you try and pray or do anything really, distractions come. And so, yeah, I arranged to have somebody call me right when we were doing that. I don't recognize the number. I also arranged for the boat to go through our cove far more quickly than they should have, just to see if we were able to maintain our focus. Last Friday, I gave what I billed as the best lecture I would ever give on hesychasm. And it was. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but you can go back. It's available on the YouTube channel, which I encourage you to subscribe to, and so on. And I've given so many lectures on hesychasm, and hesychasm means silence. Right? It's the way of silence. We offer whole classes on it in seminary. We call it spirituality, and we explore it through the works of Saint Gregory Nyssa, of Saint Gregory Palamas. Do you have to be named Gregory? Do you have to be a giant in order to? Anyways, but I've always wanted to give this one lecture. It's always been there. I've been like, man, I've got to give this lecture. This would be the best. And so last Friday I did. And you know what I did, right? The best lecture that you give on silence is just being quiet. And during that, it was funny. So I would, I set it up the way that I set up today with doing some breathing with you. And then I just sat behind the camera and just said the Jesus prayer and did my deep breathing. Right? And every once in a while, I would demonstrate one of the aids that I use sometimes to help me focus on that deep breathing. And these are pattern aids. So I do 5 seconds at each of those squares of that breathing. Right? Breathe in, pause. Breathe out, pause. Right? That's 4. So 3 times a minute. And you can get these apps that do that for you, that make a noise or something like that. Well, one of the noises that you can set it to is your haptic reminder. It's the buzzing. So, and then I had that going for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and I realized, you know what? That may not be the most peaceful thing for some people. And sure enough, I got a comment, somebody was teasing me like, hey, it was really peaceful until your phone rang. I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's really. But the funniest comment was, because on Facebook I played it up, best lecture on hesychasm ever and all this. And so the priest acquaintance who likes to, kind of, jab you a little bit, he goes, oh, well, if you were going to actually give the best lecture, I guess you would just be quiet the whole time. Ha 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 ha. Oh, that's clever. Yeah, that's clever. Oh. Oh, funny. Anyways, so, if you want to check it out, and it was actually inspired by Reader Brian Solo, who said, hey, I'd love it if you just let me listen to the birds the whole time so I could be reminded that there is such a thing as spring, seeing as how he's up in Massachusetts. So it was also that. But good times, right? Good times. These aren't, it's tough to see these as good times. The uncertainty. There's a difference between uncertainty and risk, right? Uncertainty is when you cannot put a meaningful probability to an outcome. You cannot put a meaningful probability to an outcome. Risk is where you can put a probability to it. It may be, it could be wrong, plus or minus whatever. But you can assess the risk, you can assess the value of the different outcomes, you multiply the probabilities times the risk, and then you can do your analysis and you say this is the one that, based on these assumptions, that we should go with, right? That's expected utility. It's also called rational choice. It's economic analysis. It's a good way to do decision making, as long as you have some way to assess the probabilities. And for so long during this coronavirus COVID-19, we throw numbers out, but the fact is that we were dealing with uncertainties. And so we had models that looked like risk models, right? Because you gotta put something out there. You got to be able to give advice. So, throw some against the wall. These are the probabilities, and the basic cost when you're looking at that kind of thing is life, death, and and also the outcomes of people who survive and things. So that's what we were dealing with, and so much uncertainty. We don't know, right? And so, in a situation like that, and with what we knew, it could get very bad, right? Very bad. So that's where the risk model went to. So when it can be catastrophic, and there's a reasonable, you think, probability of it being catastrophic, then you go into just shut down, and that's where we went, right? So you try to maximize that minimum. You protect yourself from catastrophe. And as you know, if you've been listening for a while, one of my things that I like to say when I'm standing on my soapbox or sitting on my porch is that there's a reason why God created us different. And part of the difference is that we share. What a word way to say it, right? One of the differences that we share is we have different risk profiles. Meaning we have different attitudes towards risk. And in general, young people tend to be more risk acceptant than older people. Right? But there are also just generally across the population different attitudes towards risk. Have you seen Free Solo? Have you seen Free Solo? You got to see it. Right? There's someone that has a different risk profile than I do. Right? I used to go rock climbing, but not like that. Even when I was young. Okay. So this is playing out now. Let me just give this as a demonstration and as a way of helping you frame some of the things that are going on in your social media feeds, which is how mainly we discuss things with our neighbors and our friends now. Because there's a lot of heat out there, right? There's a lot of heat, protesters, nanny staters, all this kind of thing. A lot of demonization, not a lot of listening. Here's looking at this as a big kind of picture. It made sense early on. So just think if we didn't have variations in risk profiles when we hit this. Let's say that our population had only selected for people with high risk profiles, right? We're a nation of entrepreneurs. We take risks, and those are the people that we're in power, right? That's it. So everyone is just risk acceptant. Go out there, break something, and if it doesn't work, we're going to try something else, right? We'd be really suffering right now, because if you have a 2 week, week as in time period, 2 week. Do you hear how ambiguous that is? 2 week. If you have a 2 week period where you don't show symptoms, but you could be carrying, and it's highly contagious, and it has even a modicum chance of killing or maiming you, that's bad. And, that's what our breast projections were. And so if we had only people who were risk acceptant, they say, hey, let's just drive through this, right? Let's just gut it out, and we'll see you on the other side. And so that entrepreneurial energy would have thrown all kinds of things at helping to ameliorate the suffering, but the system itself would have been overwhelmed. And that's why we talked about flattening the curve, right? Got to flatten the curve, because even with our entrepreneurial energy, it takes us time to react. And you can't overwhelm. If you overwhelm the system, triage is no fun. And that's where we would have been. We would have been triaging, like the worst reports that coming out of Italy, warned us. But we didn't. We don't just select for. We don't just give success to those who are risk acceptant. We naturally also accept leadership from and support people who are risk averse. Right? We do. And so we had both of those and more. We had both of those sets of risk profile leaders, both sets of them, offering solutions. Right? And, the leaders that we elected said, we're going with risk averse. We got to. I can't. We can't have this many people dying, suffering. And whatever the motivation is, see, one of the glories of our American system is that doesn't even have to be a self-interested move. Someone who doesn't have any real compassion in their heart is also going to make that same move out of pure, political necessity, a desire to stay in power, right? That's how we built this system. And regardless, so what did it give us? It gave us, you can complain about stuff. I'm not saying that the response was perfect. What I'm saying is that our diversity allowed us to choose a solution that matched the requirements pretty well. This risk averse, shut everything down, social distance, and as a result, we flattened that curve. And so we've given time for our natural entrepreneurialism to respond. Not as quickly as I'd have liked, right? I'd have liked to have seen more, more scientific testing going on. You have create natural experiments, do random testing. That we're finally getting results from some random testing coming out of some places looking for the remnants in your system of having had COVID-19. I forget what it's called. Right? And come to find out, it may be the case that it's been here longer and that it affected more people than we knew. So we're getting more data. And now the data, so if, let's look the other way. What if the system had only selected for, in America, what if it only selected people who had risk-averse profiles? So people who, did not like to throw the spaghetti against the wall, right? Who didn't like to go out there and break something and just try things until something worked. And you can imagine a system that preferred that, right? That preferred safety, status quo, protection of that. What if we only had that? Well, then we would have had that first reaction, shut everything down. But that risk aversion, if the instinct there is to say, no, every single life needs to be protected, right? Then you just shut it down for good. And, all the unintended consequences start to mount. Right? And it doesn't work. It doesn't work in the medium to long term. It's incredibly dangerous to not build some risk management, as my friend Dimitri reminded me yesterday. It's not about getting rid of all risk. It's about managing the risk. And there are always unintended consequences. There are always different dimensions of a problem that need to be assessed. And we'll talk about that in a minute too. So, God gave us these various risk profiles. And we've been smart enough in America not to just select one or the other. And here's the funny thing. So this is where words start going crazy, having different meanings. So the word conservative means, by definition, what does it mean, right? Does it mean risk acceptant or risk averse? Conservative means risk averse, right? Liberal, does it mean risk accepted or risk averse? It means risk accepted. But at least in some things, that is switched, and it's based on the willingness to use the state to protect the status quo. Whatever it is, it's just interesting that words drift. And that's happened with the word liberal. Many have remarked on that. So now, it's still a conversation going on. And that's what you see in your social media feed. And unfortunately, it's not a healthy conversation because each side demonizes the other. Doesn't listen to what they're saying, doesn't even consider that it may have value, right? Because it is so easy to put people who are like, hey man, we got to open the economy, we got to get out there and do stuff. It's so easy to put them in that same category of anti-science, flat earth, whatever. Just label them and you can ignore them, right? They don't care about anybody. All they care about is their superficial freedom, wanting to go to, I forget what the restaurant is that they labeled that these people want to go to, Fuddruckers, or no, it was some kind of an insult. You want to go to Applebee's, you want to risk your life just so you can go to a kind of a restaurant that's not that great anyways. Forgive me if you love Applebee's. That's an interesting difference between liberals and conservatives, is what restaurants they like, right? Jonathan Haidt has a great TED talk on that, the moral differences between liberals and conservatives. Check it out. Okay, so we have these different risk profiles, but we're not listening to each other, at least at this level on social media. So you get the quick demonization or the writing off of people who are saying we need to move to a more risk acceptance strategy. And the protester is saying, and we're willing to put ourselves on the line for this. I don't know if they're doing a calculation. The thing about a risk profile is it's instinctive. It's instinctive. And then you've got on the other side, because it's become clear sides, right, are people who are saying, no, life is precious. People are dying. And this is a terrible thing. Do you want billions of Americans killed? Obviously you do. Anyways, that's how they're writing them off. So they're saying, no, we have to really batten down. And you can hear, by the way, if you're listening at all, you can hear where my risk profile is, right? I'm risk acceptant when it comes to this kind of thing. I'm risk acceptant. I did 20 years in the military. You realize that, right? That suggests a certain sort of risk acceptance for things that are important. And then, so here's another thing. So that's risk profile. That's one dimension of this thing. And that's one of the ways that people talk past each other, is we have this built-in attitude towards risk. And one of the things that really affects that risk profile is if you know someone, or if you can imagine someone. So that's in a level of impact, right? If you can imagine someone, or if you know someone who has been impacted by something, then you overestimate the risk. So one of the responses that you'll see on social media to the call to loosen things up a bit is, don't you see that this is serious? Why don't you talk to a doctor? Why don't you talk to a nurse? Here, I know this person suffered terribly and died, right? And just the science of that is that if you have had that impact your life, it's not just that you feel it more, it's that you overestimate the probability of it happening. Do you hear me? If you have experienced something, or even if you've seen it on TV or read about it, It will increase your sense, your estimation of the probability of it happening. Okay. That's why people overestimate the risk of things like plane crashes, because they've seen it on the news. And so they don't look at the actual probabilities. They overestimate them. Okay. All right, and that's where we're at, is you've got people, the Kevin Bacon effect. It's coming in. It was just I've heard about. Now it's coming to I know someone who knows someone. Now it's getting closer. I know someone. Right? So you've got that, and that interacts with your kind of default risk profile. Okay? But then you've got this other thing going on is, the data. More data is coming in. And where we don't need to have just this visceral reaction. We can look at the data. And this leads to some very uncomfortable questions about the value of a life and so on. But there's another part of diversity that's important. And that, by the way, the optimism here is that this is how we work our way out of things. We have these different profiles and we try different things, and our American system is set up for that. The federal system. So I live in Georgia. Georgia's is offering itself up as saying, look, we're going to loosen things up a little bit. We're going to do social distancing, but we're going to allow people to, within those social distancing norms, we're going to allow them to go and eat inside restaurants. So they'll have it set up so that the tables are far apart, right? I'm sure they'll have it set up so anyone who waits on you or gives you food is fully gloved and covered. Anyways, so this is the beauty of a decentralized system, is that so I guess here in Georgia we have a more risk acceptant political culture. It's not unanimous. You should know that. You should know that it's not unanimous. That there are, I don't know, around half of Georgians who are like, our governor's an idiot. He's trying to kill everybody. Right. Okay. Fine. Whatever the case, at a system level, you've got these different experiments going on, and you've got other experiments going on. I mean, the knuckleheads that are still going to Walmart, and just acting like nothing's going on. So that's risk profiles. Another thing that is going on is that we are diverse in terms of our spheres of expertise and our spheres of interest. So, excuse me, every once in a while I have to take a drink. This is the official mug of On the Back Porch with Father Anthony Perkins, the Old Man's Club. My family got me this when I turned 50. Awesome present. I'm sure you can get one too. Maybe I should sell them. So a diversity of things that we're interested in and things we have expertise in. Early on, what was it that really mattered? What was the area of expertise that really mattered? It was understanding how, I'm going to get this wrong because this is not my area, how disease works, how viruses work, and how they spread. And there are several disciplines within that. So you have, I don't know what they are, biologists, you have epidemiologists, statisticians, and they're the ones you're like, hey, let's get these people and let's listen to them. They're going to assess our risk, and they're going to give us some options. We need to listen to them. And they said, this is going to get bad if we don't do something big. And we said, okay. Now, other people have things that they care and are experts on. That you also, our society creates them, and we keep them ready to offer us their options, so that we, the governing citizens of this country, can, through our elected leaders, choose from these options. One of those areas is economics. And the economists were like, blah, what's going to happen? You can't just shut down an economy. It's not a switch. Unintended consequences, blah. But we just said, shh. First things first. First things first. This is really bad, right? And the problem is, sometimes we did our automatic, people who disagree with me are not just wrong, they're evil, right? So we wrote them off by saying, oh, you care more about the economy than you care about lives. That's not very Christian, by the way. It's because it lacks charity, right? And it's what Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, and someone who understands manipulation and some analysis, right? He calls it loserthink, because it's which is his way of saying, fake news, right? Loserthink is when you assume you know someone's motivations. You don't know someone's motivations. All you know is what they said. What they're saying is, this will destroy our economy. Our response, because we care about lives, is you don't care about lives. You care about your economy. Once again, you're worshiping this thing called the market. Oh. Okay. Well, if we learn to listen to economists, what we would actually hear them saying is the economy is more than just a standalone thing. It is the thing that has brought us the ability to live and to live well. It is the system that naturally, automatically, without much supervision, gets things that people need and want to them in the most efficient manner, in the most efficient way. That's important, because people need to eat, people need a place to live, people need to work. All these things, these are what an economy naturally, in our system, provides to people. So they're like, look, if we listen to them, we'd recognize common motivation, a desire for people to live. You shut down an economy, what are you going to replace it with? How are you going to get people the things that they need? If you just think of the economy as rich people getting richer and poor people getting poorer, which is how it's so often, that's one of the side effects that needs to be addressed. The main purpose and function of the economy that ours does so well is identifying people's needs and wants and getting to them in the most efficient, affordable way. That's why I have a Walmart right up the street. That's why I have a Dollar General across the street from that. And that's why we have, yes, a wonderful mom and pop grocery store too, and another. And if you shut down the economy, what are you going to replace it with? How are you going to get people what they need? Well, you can send them money. Yes, the government is very good at that. It's good at taking money and it's good at giving money. It's not as good at recognizing what I need and getting it to me in an efficient way. Right? So, that's what the economists were really saying, but we weren't listening. Now, we're starting to bring them back into the conversation. Right? And they need to be part of the conversation, right? That's how it's supposed to be. You can't shut people out. If we only select leaders who don't understand the value of the price mechanism and supply and demand, we're done. We're done. But if they're the only ones that we have around, we're done. We're done. But that's not what our society produces. It produces people naturally. I mean, it's a beauty of our system, is that it produces people who care about and becomes experts at different things. Like we have a whole class of experts that they point out the problems in our system. We need them. We need them. We don't need just them. We don't need just them. But they have to be part of it, even when we don't agree with them. And then the third part that I'll talk about today, because we do have to get to aliens, is this area of political expertise, right? Political expertise. So one thing that you can do is you can look at these protests, and protests that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? There's a recognition by people who study politics that this present thing we're doing is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. People will not live like this. They will not continue. And so someone who studies, public opinion is going to say, give recommendations. They're giving observations. Look, this is what's going on below the surface. This is what's going on below the surface. Right now, it's being kind of held together, but and if you understand family dynamics and the weaknesses of home life across America, it's just obvious. This is setting a lot of people up for failure. It's too much stress, too much temptation for them to thrive. Right? And so that has to be part of the conversation. That has to be part of that conversation. Remember where we assess the risk, the probabilities of different things, and we look at the value of each outcome, and then we do the math, right? Part of the math is the viral impact. Part of the math is the economic impact, short, medium, long term. Part of the math is also the need for us to have a system that doesn't collapse politically. We don't want to turn into a police state. We don't want to turn into an anarchist state. We don't want to turn into a state that's full of depressed, despondent, broken people. Okay? We can do better. Which brings us to the part that we're called to do. We're called to bring the light of Christ, the love of Christ, the hope of Christ, the comfort of Christ, all these things to this situation, to people who are in this time, in this place. And so many of our conversations when I bring in guests over the next few weeks are going to be about how it is that we can witness Christ in the midst of these particular problems, this particular situation. What does the light of Christ shine on this? How does the love of Christ, the grace, how does it manifest itself? How can we become the instruments to bring that grace to bear in the most efficient manner? Okay? That's what we're about. That's what we're about, or we're about nothing. Except aliens. We're also about aliens. So, aliens, they're kind of, it's kind of a joke, one of the reasons why I'm not taking all that seriously is because I'm interested. Always have been. And I did a series of research podcasts on aliens and Christianity. Right? Does one disprove the other? How does this work? Come to find out, Christians have been talking about this for a long time. So I went over some of the things that have been said by smart and wise people, both religious and secular, and then kind of laid out where I was. We're not going to, maybe we'll do that coming up, but for now, oh, that's awesome. Let me add this to the podcast. Brett, I'm one of the knuckleheads at Walmart. Yeah, me too. I told you. We are risk accepted, right? So there you go. Thanks, Brett. Awesome. Yeah, I'm a knucklehead. And here's the thing. So something you don't know about me is that I won't insult somebody in any different way than I insult myself, right? Because otherwise you're just being mean, right? So if I call somebody a knucklehead, it's because I'm a knucklehead. So Brett, don't take it personal. So what about aliens? Why did it show up on my radar? Here, let me see how incompetent I am with this technology. Do you see that? There we go. Okay, so this is one of the sites that I check every couple of days. It's Interfax Religion, and you can just Google Interfax Religion. And this is kind of think of it as the official news media source of the Russian Orthodox Church and the Putin regime. Okay. So everything is going to be supporting their worldview, which is why I keep an eye on it, right? So here's an article. Russian Orthodox Church equates aliens with demons. And this came out on the 20th, which in my world is 4 days ago. So the Russian Orthodox Church has refused to recognize the existence of other civilizations outside Earth. And then you've got, here he is, weighing in, Metropolitan Ilarion, the head of the Synodal Department for External Church Relations, which I guess includes aliens, right? Well, like he's removed that from his portfolio. I don't have to pay attention to them. They don't exist. I'm just going to pay attention to, Europe, America, things like that. Okay. And Metropolitan Ilarion, he's one of those, he's a polyglot, right? He's a Renaissance man. He's expert in so many things. He's a composer. He's written, or at least, written, the series of books on orthodoxy that's definitive for our time. Right? I use his book and when I got to teach the class on the theology of beauty, I used his book on architecture, iconography, and liturgical music as kind of our textbook because it's definitive. It's well researched and definitive. But here he is. I guess he was asked a question about aliens. And here's the two things. This is what I'm going to talk about. So we're not going to talk about whether they exist today. Okay, whatever. You got your opinion, I got mine. Yeah, that's fun. Just don't take it too seriously. That's the danger. Don't take it too seriously. So, if civilizations really existed on other planets, our Holy Scripture, the Bible, would definitely say something about that. If it doesn't say anything about it, we assume they don't exist. I'm just hoping, I haven't looked at the original Russian to see if that's a mistranslation. It could be a mistranslation or taken out of context. But as it's written, do you see the problem here? Do you see the problem here? Oh, our data doesn't say it exists, therefore it doesn't exist. What if we don't? What if that's not what that was about? What if the Bible is the story of the economy of our salvation, and not the economy of salvation for another race that exists somewhere, right? We know that there are Elohim, right? There are beings from the other, and we're going to get to that. That's his next statement. And the Bible really doesn't tell their story. It doesn't tell the story of, for instance, the angels. It really doesn't tell the story of demons. It really doesn't tell the story of the fallen angels. Right? Commentary does, and there are hints. You can extrapolate. You can see the subtext. Right? But it's claiming that they don't exist because the Bible doesn't describe them. That's a problem. That's a problem. So it's not a problem for if it doesn't have to be a problem. But if you're trained in science, if you're trying to talk to people who are educated in science and taught how to do analysis, that it's not just that's an unconvincing argument. That's one thing. It is unconvincing. Just on the face of it. He may be right, but on the face of it, it's just unconvincing. Because there are lots of things that are in the Bible that exist. Forgive me, it also, to people who are trained in science, who are trained in serious investigation, just analytics, critical thinking, the fact that a metropolitan, and again, this was probably a longer interview, so in Charity, he cleaned this up when he was talking. But in this article, it does a disservice. It is a diswitness to Christianity. Because someone who it's real easy for people. One of the reasons it's hard to evangelize scientific atheists and agnostics is because we make it so easy for them to say that we are anti-science and unscientific. Now, it's not true. I mean, one of my best friends, Gail Walshak, she's a no-kidding, big-time scientist. She's also a no-kidding, serious Christian and theologian. Right? And it's not because she's managed to reconcile cognitive dissonance by compartmentalization. She's actively shown how one implies the other. But when we have stuff like this, people saying things that, oh, this can't exist because our data doesn't describe it. Yeah, okay. So even somebody who doesn't take aliens seriously, when they see a statement like that, they're like, man, these guys, they're still, in fact, Middle Age logic was better. We joke about it. What else floats? Oh, very tiny stones, right? But the fact is, there was some good, serious thinking going on. And then the next thing that is said there, to support his contention, he mentioned a book by Hieromonk Seraphim Rose, and that book is Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future. Okay. Oh, there, it's cited there, called Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future. The book contains testimonies by people who have seen aliens and UFOs, and the author compares these stories to manifestations of demons, stories that exist in abundance in hagiographic literature. That is a good description of chapters in that book, right? And this is something that there is still work going on, including work coming out of academia, showing the similarities between abduction stories and demonic possession stories and demonic abuse stories, satanic abuse stories, right? That these the tropes, they match, right? So I have problems with some of what Father Seraphim Rose did because I think he goes beyond his evidence. But that's a good summary of what he presents there. But can you move from that? Can you move from saying, these that I described, there are a lot of cases of people who claim what they saw were aliens that, if you look at it closely through our Orthodox Christian lens, were clearly demonic because they match descriptions of demons from before. Okay, I'm willing to accept that. That's support for a hypothesis. It doesn't prove it, but it's support for a hypothesis when you say we know what demonic possession, demonic encounters look like because we have descriptions in our tradition of it. We know what these encounters, some of these encounters with aliens look like because we have eyewitness encounters, and the two match. So our working hypothesis is that in these cases, it was actually an encounter with demons. Okay, that's working within the evidence. Here's the problem. The problem is you can't extrapolate past your evidence. The most powerful tool that, despite all that they've tried to teach me, all the statistics and things, the most powerful tool that I have in my toolbox is the 2x2 table. Okay. If you imagine a 2x2 table, and here, I guess you don't need to look at the article any longer. You can, because I've been talking with my hands. So if you have a 2x2 table, right, and it can, and it's populated by demons, aliens, interpreted as demons, interpreted by aliens, or something like that. You have a possibility for misidentification all the way around. So let me see if I can put that in English a little bit better here. So, because the point here is that the presentation of this evidence does not disprove the existence of aliens, just logically. I don't know whether there are aliens or not, but this does not shut the book on the case. Because it could be the case that you do have aliens, that you could have demons that are interpreted as aliens. You can have a case of demons that are interpreted as demons. That's the data being described. Demons interpreted as demons in our hagiographic literature. Demons interpreted as aliens in our modern literature. Okay, because that's our worldview, our secular worldview. It's not inhabited by demons. It's inhabited by, well, fantasies and also by aliens. But there's another part of that 2x2 table, and that is that there could be aliens. And as the ancient aliens people say, look, logically, it could be the case that you had aliens that were misinterpreted as demons, right? And you can certainly have aliens that really are aliens. We have no leverage on that. We have no leverage on that. So just because some aliens are interpreted as demons doesn't mean that there are not aliens that are out there. Okay? Do you see what I'm saying? So this story, and let's give the Metropolitan the benefit of the doubt that his interview was actually much better than this because he is a learned man. Okay? Let's see if I can scroll up. Yeah. So, and he's right. So the last paragraph, the church believes in the existence of angels and demons. Yes, we do. Because it is confirmed by centuries-old experience of church people. Not just because of Scripture, is what he's saying there. Okay, but it goes both ways. It goes both ways. So, my main point in this is that as Christians, we need to be careful how we present our arguments. We need to be more careful. Because we can say things that'll play well with our echo chamber, right? That'll even support their belief. But we're not just here to play to the choir. We're here to evangelize to others. And this kind of thing does not work. It doesn't work, at least for the people that I spend my time with. People who are trained in critical thinking. So this is another thing that I'll say as long as I have a soapbox to stand on or an ambo to preach from. We have to learn the language of the people that we are called to witness Christ to. We need to learn to speak that language, know it from the inside so we can proclaim Christ in that language. We celebrate how this was done by the missionaries to America, to Alaska. St. Herman of Alaska learned the local language so that he could preach. He learned the local idioms, the local mythologies, so that he could proclaim Christ in that way. One of the languages that we have to master is the language of critical thinking. Because just as if you don't learn a foreign language well, you can end up saying something the opposite of what you meant to say. You can end up phrasing something in a way that works against your purpose. This kind of article shows that we can do the same thing. Within the echo chamber, everything that was said in that article will just get a pass. But when we present this, or if it's even seen by people who speak that language of critical thinking, if they'll say stuff like this, stuff like that about this, how can I trust them on deeper matters? So, this is how I'm going to wrap up today. The way out of this is to celebrate and support diversity within the church. Instead of just putting the people who disagree with you, who think differently, into a box so that you can delegitimize them and get rid of them. Learn to listen to them. What are they saying? What's the language they're speaking? How does that relate to the language outside? What are they bringing to the table that is going to help us spread the gospel of Christ? I bet you that one of the reasons people who disagree with us make us uncomfortable is because we don't know everything. Certainly it's an indicator of that. Humility has to be part of our process of discernment. Not just so that we put our biases on the facts and thus distort them, but also so that we can listen to and understand the other. When someone says something that you don't agree with, how about following the Proverbs revealed to Solomon and use that as an opportunity, even if it's said by a fool, to learn? Well, that's enough of my foolishness for today. I've used up the whole hour, but I did get to aliens, right? If you'd like to hear more about aliens, the way to get in contact with me is to write me by email, father.anthony@yahoo.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'll answer your email, right? If you enjoyed today's show, how about hitting the like button? If you'd like to see more, go ahead and subscribe. If you ring the bell, you'll get notifications that new things are coming out. In general, I'll be putting these shows out every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 10 o'clock. You can watch them live, or they're going to sit there until YouTube figures out something better to do with its storage space. So you can watch it. You can also recommend it to others. So if you found it useful, I encourage you to do that as well. But more importantly, have that hope that comes from living in Christ. See even the stuff that goes on Facebook, stuff on social media where people are being crazy. Recognize that as a gift of God, not the crazy, but the diversity of thought. In that it is that diversity of thought that is going to, because of the way our system is set up and the way that grace operates, it's going to lead us not just to a solution to this problem, but to thriving on the other side. Well, until next time, Godspeed.